In this tutorial, I'm going to show you the steps I took to create this bloodthirsty zombie with the help of Adobe Photoshop CS5. To begin, we're going to need our three files. So you're going to need your face file, your eye file, and a picture of yourself. So to start with, I'm going to navigate to my face file. Now once I'm here, I'm going to use my rectangular marquee tool, the second tool on your toolbar, or keyboard shortcut M. Using this, I'm going to draw a rectangular selection around part of the face here to make sure I include that mouth. Now it's okay if this selection is not completely accurate. We can get a little bit of the nose. We'll remove that later. So once you have this selected, I'm going to go to my Move tool, which is keyboard shortcut V, or the top tool on our toolbar. Using that, I'm going to hold the Alt key on my keyboard, then left click on my mouse to Alt drag it to the top and onto my image of myself. I'll let go of my mouse and then place the image there. Now while I still have my Move tool selected, I can move this around and I can adjust the opacity. And I want to adjust the opacity because it will make it easier for me to line this up with my mouth and the rest of my face. To do this, as a keyboard shortcut, you can just press one of the numbers through 1 through 0 on the top of your keyboard. So 1 equals 10%, 2 is 20, 3 is 30, and so on. Now you'll see that opacity is changing over in the layers panel. This is just a quick way rather than manually typing in 30 or clicking the slider and bringing it up to a number to adjust the opacity. So I'm going to set it at, let's say, 50 for now. So I'm hitting 5 on my keyboard. Still my Move tool, I'll try to line it up here. Bring it down slightly below my nose. Get that lip below the nose at least. Maybe I'm happy with that for now. And what I can do is use my free transform tool to adjust the scale of this mouth. To do that, I'll press Control T on my keyboard, and I'm going to go to the edge of the bounding box, in this case the corners, and at these corners I'm going to hold the Shift key and then left click. And this allows me to keep the proportion the same whether I'm dragging the image big or smaller, so that height and width proportion is still the same. So as I have that, I'll drag it to something that I'm happy with. It's a little bit bigger there than I want. There, that's fine. Okay, if I don't want to keep the proportions the same, I'll just drag out the sides in this case. Might drag them out. And I can still move just by clicking into my image, then holding left click and moving it around manually, or using the arrow keys on my keyboard. Once I have that, maybe I'm happy with that for now. Say I'm good, and I'll just press enter on my keyboard or check mark up top. My keyboard, I'm going to set my opacity back to 100%, 0 on my keyboard while the Move tool is selected. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask. To do that, I'm going to go down to the Add Layer Mask icon. The Add Layer Mask icon is found at the bottom of the Layers panel, and it looks like a little camera. Just as I mouse over it here, I'll add Layer Mask, and you can see a little thumbnail is added right here. So making sure that thumbnail is selected, it has a little double selection type box around it. I'm going to go to my brush tool. The brush tool is about a third of the way down on my toolbar, or keyboard shortcut B. I'm going to access that and make sure my foreground color in this case is black. I'm going to do that because I'm going to remove this part here. So I might make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'm doing that just by pressing the bracket keys on my keyboard to make it bigger or smaller. Now this works best for now using a soft brush, which I have selected. If you don't, you might want to choose a soft brush with the hardness at 0, just like the first one here. Because I'm going to create that fuzzy edge. What I want here eventually is this skin tone to seem to blend into my skin tone. What I really want to make sure I get rid of is these hard edges here. This is really good at getting rid of some of those that I cut out from the selection. So I'm going to leave part of the skin still. It's not really a big deal. Don't really need the nose. I can get rid of that for sure. Get in there. Make sure I get this hard edge on the bottom. Get rid of that so I can't see that at all. It's fine for now. Okay, so we're at a good start here. Now, I can see I might want to make a few more adjustments and move my mouth around there, the zombie mouth a bit. So I could go back to my move tool. My layer selected, I can move it around a bit. Get over. It's good. Maybe I'll go back to my layer mask, then my brush tool. Make my brush smaller, remove more of this up top here. Just so my nose isn't really going on the top there of my lip. Okay. So I'm happy with that for now. If at any point I make a mistake, I can always switch my colors just by pressing X on my keyboard or this little arrow on the toolbar. And switch it to white, and white adds back portions of this image. You can see I'm adding it back right there. In case I don't need to do that, just going to go ahead and remove it again real quick. Alright, so I'm happy with that for now. I'm off to a good start. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply a hue/saturation adjustment layer. Now to do that, I need to have my adjustments panel open. If my adjustments panel is not open, I need to go to the window menu up top and navigate to adjustments and make sure that little check mark is applied. Once it's applied, you'll see this adjustments panel pop up on the side of Photoshop here, and the hue saturation adjustment is the second one on the second row from the right. So I'll select my hue saturation adjustment layer, and in this panel I'm going to go down to the bottom and check mark the box that says colorize. Now here it's going to immediately apply that adjustment layer to my whole image. And I only want to apply that to my layer 1 in this case, or my mouth. To do that, there's two ways. I can clip it by hitting this icon right at the bottom of the adjustments panel. I'll clip it right to that specific layer. Or I can use a keyboard shortcut by holding Alt on the keyboard and clicking in between the two layers. Just do that, and it sets up the same thing. Now here you can adjust the hue. I'm moving the slider. What you want to do is try to get the skin tone to match. Don't worry so much about the lips if you're going to remove those later. Again, they shouldn't be too far off, but we'll just say right closest as I can right there. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to click the back button on my keyboard. And now would be a good time if I want to make any other further changes to the position of the mouth, to go back to my move tool. Move up the mouth a little bit, maybe go over to the side, cover up any sections I didn't want. Maybe I wanted to go back to my layer mask then, clicking on the layer mask, the thumbnail there, go back to my brush tool, move some more, touch it up a little bit. Now, when I made my hue saturation adjustment layer, it applied it to my one layer, in this case layer 1, but it got the teeth as well, and clearly I don't want the teeth. So what I can do is use a layer mask to remove that effect. And the nice thing about adjustment layers is they already have that built-in layer mask. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that layer mask on the hue saturation layer. Doing this, I can just use that same brush tool and remove with black part of that adjustment. Just getting in there, removing it, making the teeth back to the original white. Adjust the brush size if needed to. Slowly paint over. Get that original color back, just like we're digging a hole through the top layer and going right underneath it. If you want, you can get the lips too while you're there, but I'm happy with those for now. And I'll just zoom out, take another look, and that's a good start. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to rename some of my layers here. It's a good practice to name your layers just so you keep your work organized at any point in time. I'm going to name my layer 1 to mouth. I just double clicked on it there and change my layer 0 to me in this case. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my eye. And I'm just going to grab this whole image here. To do that, I'm going to get my move tool, keyboard shortcut V. I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard and then left click on my mouse and drag it over to my image. I'll let go, place it on there. I can use my free transform to resize it, Control T, holding Shift to keep the proportions the same while dragging the corners in. Might want to move it around, guess there, Shift again, move it around there. Move it in more. I'm happy with. Hit enter when I'm successful. Now I might want to check how does that line up. Set the opacity at 50. I'm pressing 5 on my keyboard. Alright, that's pretty good. I'm happy with it. I'll set it back at 100. Press 0. I'm just going to use the same technique I used in making the mouth to make this eye blend in here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer mask. Click my add layer mask icon. I'm in the thumbnail. I'm going to go to my brush tool, keyboard shortcut B. My brush a little bit bigger here. And just start to brush away some of these hard edges. Now I'll zoom in here to get a better view. Make sure I'm getting these edges here. You want to leave a bit of the eyelid. So just try to not catch that eyelid here. Go off. We can always make our brush smaller if needed to by using the bracket keys on the keyboard. Get it a little bit closer. Keep that eyelid, as much of the eyelash as we can as well. But just make sure we get rid of that hard edge. Continuing with that same process I used on the mouth, I'm going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. So second one from the right on the second row, my hue saturation. Check my colorize box at the bottom. Then I can move my hue in here a little bit. Adjust it. Now this is affecting the whole image. Remember, we want to just clip it to our one image. I can either click the clipping icon here or hold Alt and click between the layers. I'll set that up. Move my hue right there, something I'm happy with. Hit the back button on my adjustment layer. And then I'll go to my thumbnail and that hue saturation layer. And using the brush tool, I'm going to remove part of that mask, digging a hole in the top, so that I get the color of this eye to show through. Slowly apply that. Dig it in here. Got that iris and pupil showing. You can feel free to get the cornea if you wish as well. But I'm happy with that for now. I'll leave it like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that eye and move it over to my left side of my face so that I have two matching eyes. To do this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to merge two of my layers. So that adjustment layer I just made, and in this case my layer 1 or my original eye, I'm going to control click so that I have both of them selected, then right click and go to merge layers. Once I have this, I can use keyboard shortcut Control J and it duplicates that layer. Now here's a good time where I can name my layers again on my copy here. I'm going to go ahead and name that eye left. In my original one, I'm going to name that eye right. So selecting my eye left in my layers panel and then using the move tool or V keyboard shortcut on my keyboard, I'm going to move my eye left over to my left. Now if you want to keep this perfectly aligned, you can hold Shift while you're moving, and it'll keep this at perfect intervals, either straight up or down at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to move it to about where I'm happy. Then let go. Good. Now I want to flip this because right now they're both orientated to be the right eye, and I want to make this left. To do that, I need to go up to my Edit menu, then go to Transform, and go to the second from the bottom, which is Flip Horizontal, or side to side. So I have it right there. Looks like it's good and placed, and I'll be happy with that for now. Alright, so what I want to do now is make a new layer on top of all my other layers. To do that, I'm going to go down to the Create New Layers icon. Click that at the bottom of my Layers panel, and I'm going to move it up to the top of my tree. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this one Fog, so I know what I'm doing. Double click the layer name, name it to Fog. And I'm going to change my foreground and background colors. So I'm going to click on my foreground color. In this case, I used the numeral value 00BBA7. I'm going to press OK. And for my background color, I'll click on that, and I'm just going to use black. So now that I have those, I'm going to go ahead and go up to my Edit menu, then Fill, then make sure my use is set to foreground color, and press OK. Now I can also just hit Alt Backspace on my keyboard, and that will quickly fill in my foreground color. So once I have that, I'll go to my Filter menu, then go to Render, and go to Clouds. Should apply the clouds effect there, and we need to change our blend mode. And our blend mode is also found in our layers panel, and right now it's set to normal. So if we click on that arrow, it will pop up a whole list, and we want to go to overlay. So we have overlay selected, and we're going to make another layer as well to add more of a shadow type effect. So to do that, I'm going to make another new layer, click on my new layers icon. And here I'm going to switch my background color to black, and I can do that just by hitting the X key on my keyboard or clicking the arrow on the side here of the toolbar. So once I have that, I'll go ahead and fill that in with Alt Backspace. Make sure it's selected. Alt Backspace and filled in there. Now, using another tool called the Eraser tool, I'm going to remove some of these pixels from the top layer. I can access the Eraser tool by going about halfway down the toolbar to the Eraser tool or keyboard shortcut E. Now, I can set my brush here to somewhere around 500 to 700 is good, and I'll zoom out a little bit in this case, but I'm going to make sure my opacity is somewhere between 20 to 25%. I already have it at 20 here. That's good. Set it up here, and I'll just start clicking in this case. Maybe I'll do like 4 clicks around the edge. Keep going here, a little bit 5. I'll get one up top that I'm happy with. Alright, so that I have that on there, I've applied my little fog type effect here. Now I can add that blood type effect to the neck and the teeth here. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. A new layer. It's up at the top. I'm going to rename that layer. Double clicking on the word blood. And while I'm here, I'm going to rename the other layer as well. My other one, shadow. I go back to my blood layer, and I'm going to change my brush color to a red. Somewhere a bright red. That's good. And I'll make sure that my brush is a bit smaller, more reasonable size that I'll be dealing with here. Alright, so I might just click in here then, add something to the teeth, but I do want to make sure my opacity is at 100% again. So I'll adjust my opacity back up to 100 at the top. sure I'm at my brush tool first. So my brush tool, the opacity is already at 100. Click in there, add a little effect to the teeth on the lip. And I'll put some on the side of his chin. Go down here. Part. Make it on his neck. Add that in. Fill it in there a little bit. That's fine. Go on there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and change that blend mode to overlay as well. So our blend modes are found in our layers panel. Right now it's at normal. I'm going to go ahead and set it to overlay. And I'm going to make one more adjustment here. I'm going to make a duplicate of the fog layer. So I'm going to click on my fog layer. I'm going to hit Control J on my keyboard. Control J. And I'm going to adjust the opacity on this layer to 30. I'll just select my Move tool. Then click on my fog copy layer, in this case, fog copy. Make sure I have it selected, and I'm going to hit 3. And I adjusted my opacity, it's at 30. So, there we have it. We have our completed Bloodthirsty zombie created using these steps in Adobe Photoshop CS5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this available and ready for print. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and go to Image, Image Size, and pop up the Image Size menu. Now 300 is a really fine resolution to print at, for print media in this case. So what I'm going to do first is uncheck this resample image. Resample is adding or removing pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and change my resolution to 300. And this is going to be locked to my width and height. They'll change along with it. So I have that there. And I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. Even though you see it's not at the 8.5 by 11 I wanted, I'm going to press OK. So I have that in there. And now I'm going to use my crop tool. And in my crop tool, these values might be clear up top where it says width, height, resolution. I'm just going to go ahead and hit clear for now on that. And then I'll manually enter those in again so you can see 8.5, height 11, and resolution at 300. Now I already know my image is at 300 resolution because when I went to my image size, I can see it's at there. So what this crop tool is going to let me do is create a box around here as I drag that it's going to be 8.5 by 11 no matter what. So once I'm happy with that, I can either hide or delete the pixels. Select hide, hit enter or check mark. If I'm happy with it, I might want to move my box over a little bit, line up my rule of thirds, split it up here, and hit enter. So I'll zoom out. So with that, I'd be ready for print. And I have my fully completed Bloodthirsty zombie.